All right, guys, so as I mentioned in class, the test, this is a full Chapter 1 review guide. So everything that's on here is not necessarily going to be on the first quiz. What will be on the quiz will be questions like number 22 and question like number 4 and 5 and 7 and 8. So I'm going to go ahead and do the questions to show you the work for the questions that are similar to the first quiz. So you can always pause and fast forward and just look at specific questions that you have. So let's start with number 2. Number 2, which is the correct expression for 9 plus n? Well, 9 more than n or 9 plus n would be correct because quotient is division, product is multiply. And 9 less than n, which is important to know for the quiz also, would be n minus 9 because 9 less than n means you're taking 9 away from n. Okay, number 4, simple one-step equation. What you would do is add 7 to both sides, and you would get that x is equal to 32. And you could always check your work. 32 minus 7 is equal to 25. Number 5, trying to isolate a, so you're going to subtract 22 from both sides, and you get 32 is what a is equal to. And if you punched it in, 32 plus 22 is 54, so you know that that's correct. Number 7, you're multiplying m by -8. So to undo it, you divide by -8. M is equal to, a positive divided by a negative is a negative, so -6. Number 8, you're dividing by 7. So to undo it, you multiply by 7. And you get h is equal to 42. 42 divided by 7 is 6, so you know it's correct. Okay, let's go to the next page. Questions like 9, 10, 11, and 12. So let's do all of these. Number 9, this is a proportion. The reason it is a proportion is because you have a full quantity. X plus 8 is one number. If you knew what x was, you would add 8 first. And then that would give you a number, and then you would divide by 24. This is a proportion because a fraction equal to a fraction is a proportion. Not to be confused with if you had something like x over 24 plus 8 is equal to 3 over 2. This is not a proportion. This is not a proportion. It's not the same thing. So what you would have to do for the actual question is cross multiply. So you get 2 times x plus 8 is equal to 24 times 3, which is 72. And then from here you would solve as normal. Distribute. 2x plus 16 is equal to 72. Now we need to subtract 16. We're trying to undo what's being done. So we do the inverse of adding and subtracting first. You get 2x is equal to 56. And now we divide by 2 on both sides. And 56 divided by 2 is 28. So we get x is 28. Check your work by plugging it in. And 28 plus 8 is 36. And then if you look at 36 over 24, it actually does simplify to 3 over 2 if you divide by 12. So you know that it is correct, and the answer is 28. The checked work that we do, in other words, like when we plug it back in to check our work, I'm not grading you on that. I just want to make sure you know that you can always check your work and be sure that you have the answer correct. Okay, number 10, solving for z. Distribute, and you get 2z plus 2 is equal to 16. Subtract 2 on both sides, and you get 2z is equal to 14. And then when you divide by 2, you get that z is equal to 7. And again, you can check your work. 7 plus 1 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16, so I know that it is correct. And I can circle my answer. All right. Now, number 11 is different than the other one, number 9, because this is not a proportion. This one up here is. Notice that it's the whole variable and plus 8 over 24. And this one, D is being divided by 3 and then subtracted by 9. So in order to solve this one, you bring that 9 over to the right and you get D divided by 3 is equal to negative 12 plus 9 is negative 3. Now D is being divided by 3, so to undo it, I multiply both sides by 3. That undoes that and gets D by itself, and negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. Again, you could check your work. Negative 9 divided by 3 is negative 3, and negative 3 minus 9 is negative 12, so I know that that's correct. All right, number 12, we have a variable on both sides of the equal sign. So when I go to solve this one, I have to make sure that I choose where I want to bring my letters and my constants, my numbers. I always try to get my A's on the left and numbers on the right. Some of you may recognize by looking at this that if I brought this A over here, it would leave that positive. So you might want to bring the A here and this 8 there. You can definitely do that. I'm just going to stay with the idea of bringing all the letters to the left. And if I subtract 3A, I get negative 2A plus 6 is equal to negative 8. Some of you may not have done the letter first. You might have brought the constant, minused it first. That would give you the same answer. It's the same exact thing. It's just in a different order. If I minus 6 here, I get negative 2A is equal to negative 8 minus 6 is negative 14. And when you divide by negative 2 to get A alone, you get A is equal to positive 7, because negative divided by negative is a positive. You could check your work. Put 7 in here. 7 plus 6 is 13. Put 7 in here. 3 times 7 is 21, and 21 minus 8 is also 13. Notice that it makes a true statement, so that's correct. The check work is not the same thing as when you get like infinite solutions. Notice that I found an answer and then plugged it in, and I just made sure that it was true. Great. Okay, let's look at the next page. So on the actual quiz that you are going to have on next week, you won't have any of 14, 15, 16. So let's do just 13 for this question. Distribute 6x minus, make sure you remember you do 1 times 6 also, is 6x minus 1. Some of you, if you're nice and calm and relaxed, you'll recognize that this is not a true statement already. You can't have 6x minus 6 be equal to 6x minus 1. So you could say no solution at that point. Others of you might be like me and you'd be in the middle of it and you're not really thinking very straight, so you just want to do the work. You might add 6 to both sides. And you would get 6x is equal to 6x plus 5. Then you would subtract 6x to bring it to the other side. And you would get 0 is equal to 5, which is not a true statement, therefore no solution. Okay, let's go to the next page because these questions on this study guide are for the full Chapter 1 test, not for the quiz that you have next week. All right, so this is another proportion. That means that we are going to cross multiply. And we get 3 times x minus 2 is equal to 10 times 5, which is 50. Now we distribute and we get 3x minus 6 is equal to 50. And from there, add 6 to both sides. And you get 3x is equal to 56. Now I am going to divide by 3. And I get x is equal to, if you use your calculator, you would get a repeating decimal. So 56 divided by 3 is 18.6 repeating. When you get that, if you use your calculator and you get that decimal, I want you to just leave it as an improper fraction. In other words, don't divide it out. It's just 56 over 3. That's really the same thing as 18 and 2/3, but leaving it as a fraction is fine. Great. All right, let's look at this one. Here we are multiplying h by -3/7. So you're going to multiply by the reciprocal, -7/3, to both sides. The act of multiplying by a reciprocal undoes that, and you get h equals, and then 6 times -7/3 is -42/3, which is just -14. Let's go on to the next page. All right, so for this, on the summative quiz that you are going to have, the only part that you are going to need from here, that you're not going to need really, is number 23. You will have one like 21 and 22, and the vocab, even though it's not going to be part of the graded part, okay, so this on the quiz, so on S1.1, it's not graded. It's just to make sure that you understand the vocab. So you do need to know this vocabulary, and I'll go over that in a minute, but I don't want you to feel that that part is going to be graded. Okay, number 21. This is not a proportion, because if you look at it, there's 3 different fractions. Now, a fraction, if you recall what it means, the reason they created the division problem question symbol, the reason that they created the division symbol was to show you that it was a fraction, numerator over denominator. And so in order to get rid of fractions, division, you multiply. And in order to do that, the first thing you have to do anytime you're working with fractions is get them all to have a common denominator. Hopefully you recognize that the common denominator of 2 and 14 is 14. So let's get this guy to become 14 by multiplying by 7/7. So we rewrite the first part, and now the second fraction is 7/14 is equal to 1/14. We talked about in class the idea of destroying the denominator. And to destroy the denominator, you are basically going to undo the division. To undo division, you multiply. So in order to undo divided by 14, divided by 14, and divided by 14, you are going to simply multiply the whole entire equation by 14, because you're going to multiply 14 to everything. By doing that, you are simply just erasing or getting rid of the denominator. You're undoing that division. So that leaves you with d minus 7 is equal to 1. And now it's a simple one-step equation. D is equal to 8. You could check your work, especially because you have a calculator. And the way to check your work would be you would plug in the 8 into the numerator. So essentially you would have 8/14 minus 1/2, and you want to make sure it gives you 1/14. So to do that, you would use your calculator, and 8/14, so we're doing 8/14, if you notice right here. So 8/14, 8 over is this button, 14, oops, sorry, backspace, 14, minus 1/2, 1/2, it should give me 1/14, and sure enough it does. So I know that the question, my answer of 8 is correct, because when I plugged it back in, I got the right answer. All right, moving right along. Distribute, and we get 7x minus 14 equals 7x plus 14. Again, you might look at it and go, how can 7x minus 14 be equal to 7x plus 14? Which means that at this point, you already know there's no solution. It's not the same thing, because this one's negative and this one's positive. Now, if you didn't see it then, you can go ahead and solve like normal. You might 7x subtract 7x from both sides, and you would get negative 14 is equal to positive 14, which is not a true statement. So therefore, it's no solution. Okay. All right, so the vocab. What you will need to know for the vocabulary is the idea of what everything is. For example, a coefficient. If I was to show you an expression such as 5x, and I said 5, you would know that 5 is the coefficient. And these are all vocab words that we learned in pre-algebra. So you'll need to know these. It won't count on this test. You will be asked on this test, but it won't count for the grade. But on the next test, which is a cumulative full chapter 1, you will be expected. So that's what a coefficient is. A constant is a number without a variable. So for example, the number 6, that is a constant. A variable is obviously a letter. So x is the variable. To evaluate means to find the value. You will not have literal equation because that's something that we are going to be working on next week after the summative. Identity are all real numbers. Remember that what that means is when you get something like 7 equals 7 or 8 equals 8 or -2 equals -2, that's identity. As opposed to no solution is when you solve it and you get a false statement like 5 is equal to -2. That's not true. You can't do it. A proportion is when two fractions are equal to each other, are equivalent. And unit rate you're not going to have on this quiz, but remember that a unit rate is the rate for one item. So hopefully this is a great review for you guys, and you guys have completed all of the questions, at least the questions that I'm going to be quizzing you on next week, and that this video will help you also. Remember that I want you guys to complete the study guide, but you're not uploading it. That's just for your reference. The study guide, which is this one that you just found, you should have been able to find it, was under S1.1, and the answers are all in there as well, but this video will obviously walk you through everything.